You are listening to the Agree to Disagree program on thenewamericanmedia.com.
Welcome back, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. My name is Brian. This is thenewamericanmedia.com. As the creepy robot lady just informed you of, yes, she is quite accurate. We appreciate her. She's cheap labor. And you know, in today's economy, it's always good to keep a close eye on the bottom line. By the way, Bruce Irvin, defensive end from West Virginia, has been selected by the Seahawks at pick number 15. In case you were curious, which I'm sure you're not, because we're transitioning over into a new program right now. But that's what I really like about doing this show. What I like about it is that we try to get some of the sports fans to consider politics. And we get some political people to consider sports. It's a little bit of back and forth. And what we're going to do now is we're going to bring in another Ohio guy, Dan Johnson, to our program. Founder of PANDA.
Hello?
Dan Johnson, this is Brian with thenewamericanmedia.com. You are live, sir. How are you doing today?
Excellent. And yourself, sir?
I'm living the dream. Thank you very much. I appreciate having you on the program. We you know what? This is the part of the show where I like to just open it up. I like to kind of let everybody know, how did you find us? How did we set the show up? Because part of thenewamericanmedia.com is encouraging all the listeners to participate. You know, you could sit on the sidelines and watch the so-called experts tell you about the NFL draft or about politics, but some people just have to get involved, and you just got involved. So how did you find us, and tell us a little bit about PANDA?
All right, so I found the New American Media actually via Twitter. I was looking for people who were talking about the NDAA and liberty-related things, and found you guys via Twitter. So social networking, email, social media is really kind of the crux of the liberty movement, and that's how I've found many people who are on the same side.
Now, why do you think that social media is playing such a key role in the liberty movement, as you called it? Number one, I know I just asked you that question, but define the liberty movement and then tell me why you think that social media and online presence is so important for the liberty movement.
The liberty movement is basically people getting together and saying, all right, the government's too big. They're too encroaching on our liberties. They're taking away civil liberties left and right. They're taking away internet rights. They're taking away all of these things. And the liberty movement says, okay, enough. The government is no longer going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. It should be a little bit smaller. And social media is crucial to the liberty movement because back when we started this nation, when a law was passed, no one knew about it. No one knew. Now, thank goodness they were honest, very honest people back then, since they'd just been through a revolution. But no one knew about this, and no one had really heard about any laws. So social media is crucial for spreading word on laws that the government passes and spreading word on government action. And that would never happen without social media, without email, without several other things.
So we have the situation where you contacted us, you found us because, yes, we have done some previous radio shows about the National Defense Authorization Act, or it's, hashtag NDAA. We've talked with radio shows such as Existential. Ben Weinbrower from Chicago is really big into this. Also, we have Mark Clare and the Lions of Liberty crew who are really into the NDAA. And these people are just across the country starting to wake up and realize that something's wrong here. Realize that something just doesn't make sense, and it's almost as if we wanted to come up with a kooky Hollywood story that you'll never believe this. It's something we have to believe because it's something that's on every news site that isn't controlled by the corporate interests on the so-called mainstream media or lamestream media.
Correct.
Tell us about why you think the NDAA is not getting the press that it deserves and why it's taking alternative news sources to kind of push this content out there to a public that doesn't really even know what we're talking about.
Well, with the NDAA being debated and deliberated behind closed doors, they really never wanted the public to know about this, which is also a key to understanding why it's so bad. If you wanted to do something good, you'd obviously want to spread it out to the world. Well, they didn't want the public to know about this, and if mainstream media were to pick up on this, then the public would learn about it and learn the dangerous provisions in it, and they would automatically turn against it. So it would be against the makers of the bill, the creators of the bill. It would be against their interest to let the mainstream media report on this, and that's part of free speech, is the mainstream media's ability to choose which they report. And that's why it takes alternative media that actually, really, media that cares about the people, and media that sticks up for the people when no one else will, to report on these type of things.
Now, it doesn't really seem like over the past few years that the media has had the general public's interest at heart. You know, people in the Occupy movement are saying, oh, it's the 99% versus the 1%, making it seem like there's a couple of people with dark, creepy, sinister looks and twitching their fingers like Mr. Burns in a closed room with a martini or a scotch, you know, making every decision that's screwing everyone over. But the media used to do that job of shining the light on the darkness and making the cockroaches scatter. It just doesn't really seem like that's going on, and that hasn't been going on for quite some time. Do you agree with that? And if so, why do you think that is?
The mainstream media will give the public what they want to an extent. The public wants a lot of entertainment, especially, like, for example, radio shows like Rush Limbaugh and mainstream media shows like CNN and things like that. It's a lot less reporting, like Walter Cronkite, and a lot more entertainment. And that's what a lot of Americans want, is a lot of entertainment. Well, the reason that they are giving the people what they want. But if people start knowing about this, then they'll start wanting to know about it on mainstream media. And mainstream media is not having the people's interest at heart, because if you look back to any country that attempted to become an authoritarian state, then you can easily see that one of the keys to being an authoritarian state is controlling the media and controlling the thoughts of the people in that state.
Well, you're saying that the people want entertainment, so you're saying they basically want their cake and their circuses. They just want to be entertained while Rome burns. They want to play the fiddle while everything is really hitting a critical mass. And we're still at that point with American Idol and, you know, fill in the blank, whatever popular TV show. Do you really think that our country, that's the problem? It's pretty much the citizenry who's taking liberty and freedom for granted?
It is, and when you've had something so long, it's hard not to take it for granted. And freedom and liberty have been in America for so long that people automatically expect them to be there. And when they start disappearing, they don't notice as well because they're distracted. And they want to be distracted by a lot of this entertainment. They want to distract people. And a key part of that is because politics is intentionally made boring. If people are disinterested in politics, then they're apathetic, and that gives the leaders basically free rein to do what they want. So politics being made boring means entertainment is fun, and people usually want to do things that are fun over things that are boring.
I'm sorry, Dan. I lost you there. What were you saying? I was just watching that Quentin Coples was selected from defensive end with the New York Jets from North Carolina. He's 6'6", 284 pounds. Isn't that way more interesting than, I don't know, being grabbed and black bagged and stolen and kidnapped by your own federal government with the National Defense Authorization Act? Isn't Quentin Coples' selection at number 16 from the Jets way more important? Because I totally lost what you were saying there. I was distracted, sir.
And it's not way more important, and that's one of the keys to the liberty movement, is making politics cool again. And Ron Paul in his campaign, has done an excellent job with this. He's made it cool. He's had loud music at these conferences. And he gets people young and old. But politics made cool again gets people interested in the politics without it having to actually affect them. Many people who are seriously involved in politics and in the political arena have had a major effect. Either they lost their business, they lost their job because of it, or something of the sort, where it made them get into it. Whereas if you make something cool, make something fun, then people are going to be more apt to listen in and more apt to pay attention. It's just like at work. If you make work fun, people are more likely to do it.
Well, let's back up here, because one of the things we talked about is we want to have you sum up the National Defense Authorization Act in 60 seconds. It's what we talked about before the show, just saying it's called an elevator pitch. If you jump on the elevator, you're with Donald Trump for 60 seconds, and you have 30 seconds to make a great idea. I've had this great idea. I just need an investor. Go. Lead with the most important information. So I want to get back and kind of come back around to explaining who you are, when you got involved with the NDAA, how the background of it. But before we even get into that, let's just assume that people don't have the attention span to listen to this entire broadcast, that don't have the attention span to listen to the entire YouTube clip, or, we're too distracted with the NFL draft to give a damn 5 minutes from now, and we forget that we're talking with Dan Johnson of PANDA, and apparently we have to say that every 5 or 10 minutes because the audience forgets who we're talking to. So let's give that elevator pitch to anyone out there listening, and I see that the live connections, we have an audience out there listening. Talk to them. It'll be an unofficial 60 seconds. I don't have my stopwatch on me. But in a few sentences, sum it up with the most important things. What is the NDAA? Why should people care? What's wrong with it? And what do we do to fix it? You're on the clock just like they are in the NFL draft. Go.
NDAA stands for the National Defense Authorization Act. It's been passed for about 48 years. It's a bill that usually authorizes funding for the military. It remains really harmless until the new counterterrorism provisions, 1021 and 1022. In one sentence, they allow the government to arrest American citizens without charge or trial. It was signed on New Year's Day. What a way to bring in the new year. The president vowed to veto it, but did not. And all the corrections proposed so far, besides Ron Paul's bill, are just smoke and mirrors.
Wow. Now that was good. I think you have a little bit of time to spare. That was very nice. But one of the things that the opposition, there are people saying the NDAA is not a big deal. Okay, so you kind of laid it out there and what the problem is, but you're going to have people that are opposing that point of view and say, well, look, the NDAA provision to detain people, to grab them off the street and hold them indefinitely without trial on an accusation indefinitely, that doesn't apply to U.S. citizens, so don't worry, nothing to see here, move along, good sir. That's what some of the opposition is going to try to tell the American public, and for the sake of argument, say that I'm the opposition right now. Respond to me saying, come on, Dan, this doesn't matter to you. It doesn't matter to the newamericanmedia.com listeners. It doesn't matter to the PANDA followers on Twitter and Facebook and all the stuff that you're doing. It doesn't matter because it's not about American citizens. Respond to that, because I've heard that.
Right. And I'll present a very solid argument that has been brought forth by the ACLU, the American Civil Liberties Union, Amnesty International, a core human rights group, and even all the way, that's the left side of the spectrum. Go to the right side of the spectrum, you have Oath Keepers and the Patriot Coalition. Bipartisanly, and there's what they're saying, and it's very simple, actually. Under Section 1021B, covered persons. This is the first way it applies to American citizens. It says, a person, in B2, it says a person is part of substantially supported Al-Qaeda, the Taliban, or associated forces that are engaged in hostilities against the United States or its coalition partners. And here's the key, including any person who has committed a belligerent act. But belligerent act is not defined, and belligerent act is an act of hostility or an act of anger toward a country. And the United States government continues to define a belligerent act as an act of terrorism. So basically, protesting is now a low-level act of terrorism, and etc. And that's just the first point. If you go into it was an amendment added by Dianne Feinstein, and what it's supposed to do, or supposedly does, is basically gets rid of, it doesn't apply to American citizens, and etc. Well, it says under 1, United States citizens, this is 1022 section, or part A, it says the requirement to detain a person in military custody under this section does not extend to citizens of the United States. It's very easy to debunk this with a simple analogy. If I hand you a raw chicken, Brian,
yes, and
I say, Brian, you are not required to cook this raw chicken. The requirement does not exist. You are not required to cook this raw chicken. And you have to give it back to me. I may end up with the chicken back in my hands, cooked, breaded, and buttered, thank you. But if I say you are prohibited from cooking that raw chicken when I want it back, then I better get that chicken back raw. The requirement does not exist, but the option most definitely does. and that is how it applies to United States citizens, and that's 2 sections and just 2 points of that.
Huh. You know, let's... Now you got me thinking about chicken and realizing that I'm really hungry. Thanks a lot for nothing. But this is a good point for me to take a kind of go backward now, because I wanted to address that and kind of bring it back around, because you said that the government repeatedly defines the characteristics of belligerence to therefore mean XYZ. And everything's about the definition. If you can control the definition, the meaning of the word, and if you can scare people enough to give away their liberty for protection, which as Jesse Ventura and Benjamin Franklin both say, as well as many hundreds of thousands of other brilliant people, it never works and it's always a bad idea. I was often described as a belligerent. And oftentimes, and maybe still so, but oftentimes in college at Bowling Green State University, I was I was described as a belligerent. I want to get to your story as a person, and why you started PANDA and what PANDA's trying to accomplish. We're going to get back to the nuts and bolts of this here, but I want to kind of keep it moving so people don't get lulled into all of the nuts and bolts to the point where they zone out, and get back to the fact that Dre Kirkpatrick, a cornerback, was selected by the Bengals at pick number 17, because we know how easily distracted we can be. Tell us about what you're doing over at Bowling Green and why you started PANDA out of all the other hundreds of things you could be doing up there in Northwest Ohio.
And, yeah, for sure. This easily highlights, again, what I talked about before, how social media is crucial to the liberty movement. I actually was using StumbleUpon, which is basically, for those of us who don't know, it's a random link generator. And what I did was I put politics as one of my interests. And I came across a video on the NDAA on current.com. And it was talking about, from several different right and left sources, that the NDAA, it basically said, senators betrayed you today. And I was looking at it, and I watched that video probably 10 times, looking over going, this can't be happening. So I spent about a month from late November to late December researching the NDAA and finding out what it is and the legal language and the different arguments behind it. And my first action toward it was created a video called The NDAA America, Welcome to Martial Law. And that's also on the About Us section on our website.
And what is that
from
website
then on,
again?
I basically took whatever I knew about it and just started talking to people about it. Just started connecting with people who knew more than I did and talking to them, and connecting people who knew less than I did and sharing what I knew. I activated a long Twitter account. That's a Second Opinion on Twitter, and started tweeting about the NDAA, connected with different people, and started learning about it. From then, I go to college here at Bowling Green State University, and I just started to talk to people about it, say, hey, would you like to do anything about it? And again, through social media, through Twitter, I connected with the Rhode Island Liberty Coalition, who drafted a law that nullifies the detention provisions of the NDAA in your city or your state. So what I made my next goal from January 9th at the start of the semester to February 21st was gathering enough people to go down to march to City Council, introduce a law to stop NDAA and stop the ridiculous encroachment of our liberties here. Eventually, February 21st, our big day, we brought 25 people to City Council, and the law, they rejected it, but it was the start of something great. We've held protests on campus. The movement itself is now in, I can't even keep track of the number of states. We just opened up in 3 states recently: Rhode Island, Arizona, and Connecticut. And it's growing so fast that I'm so honored to be in the battle with such patriots that are against this indefinite detention and saving our civil liberties. And we've gotten to the point where we have over 30 supporting organizations and several backstage organizations that have said, hey, we'll support you on a case-by-case basis, or we'll support you here and there. And we're going to be mobilizing sometime late in May and basically ready to move on from there.
Well, Dan, this is a good opportunity to tell everybody about where they can find your website and what they're going to find when they get there.
All right, so our website is peopleagainstndaa.com. That's www.peopleagainstndaa.com. And a lot of the things you'll find on there are really helpful if you're, for example, explaining the NDAA to someone who has no idea what it is. We have our more info and resources pages, which basically outline in videos, resources, and anything else that people would need, anything that you know about the NDAA, including a legal analysis for anyone who's a bit skeptical about what we're saying. It also includes some beats so you can rock out to some liberty music as you're kind of moving along wherever you're going. And then we have legislation. This is a crucial part. We have legislation where people can download this, modify it to their city, and introduce this to city council and say, hey, we're your voters. We voted you in, and we'd like you to stop this bill. The most crucial part of the website is our Get Involved page. It's a small form that you fill out, and it lets us know what you're willing to do to help us out with fighting the NDAA. And from then on, you get access to so many resources, including legal advice, including anything you would need, basically, to take down the NDAA in your state or your city. There's also some about and contact. There's some articles and video, a little bit more about us. The local news covered us in a couple articles there. And then there's the anti-NDAA candidates page, which, although it's in the works right now, we'll be putting a database up there that has every candidate that has come out publicly against the NDAA. So you can search your state. You can say, I'm in Colorado, search, and you'll find Tisha Cassidy, who's running for the House, and she has publicly come out against the NDAA before it was even passed and said, this is something I'm dedicated to fight. And we show you where they're running so that you can definitely vote those people in, so that we can get some people for liberty who are in government circles as well. The final things you'll see is you'll find some media, some downloads. NDAA session is here. The full text of the bill, so you can look it up yourself, is here. And some real news where we highlight 3 particular news sources, including New American Media, that are actually reporting the news instead of entertainment and which star's dating who now.
Well, by the way, thank you for that link. We do appreciate that. And if you go to our site, thenewamericanmedia.com, the first thing you'll see is some of the entertainment of covering the Cleveland Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. You know, we find it very important to hit up some music. You mentioned some music, and I just wanted to say while we're on the topic of music, let all of your friends know. Like you said, there's a place to rock out and find all of these artists that are down with the liberty cause. I mean, come on, find me somebody that isn't at least conceptually aligned with the liberty movement. I don't know. I have a hard time imagining the people that are against free will and liberty. I find it hard to believe that people would intentionally pick that. But please let them know as you start finding these musicians that we love playing new music on this show. So if anybody has original content that they solely created, recorded, and have the license to sign over that, yes, we can play it on our show, can you let them know that they have a friend over here and we'd love to take some submissions and you can connect them with us after the program? Still there, Dan?
Yep, I'm still here. And, yeah, I can definitely do that. There's one person I want to highlight while I'm on here. It's John Kokalis Music Productions. John K. Featuring Capiche, who's a local artist in California. They have made several beats, including they're actually releasing an album, Doom-mocracy. That's D-O-O-M, D-O-O, Mocracy. And they highlight a lot of the different aspects, ending the Federal Reserve and what the founders would have done and things like that, in some really high-quality hip-hop music. And they've been doing a really good job, and that's a good source of some music to rock out to that has a good cause, a good purpose.
Well, Dan, we're up against a commercial break. We could either wrap it up here or we can stick around for the second half of the program and we can get into some of the questions that came back as you sent out some of these, and we can get into some of that. You know, the Federal Reserve, how does that tie into the Liberty Movement, and how does that connect with the NDAA? Do you want to stick around for another segment?
That sounds good.
All right, perfect. Well, here's what we're going to do. We're going to hit up our commercials. Your mic is still going to be live, so just go ahead and stay calm, cool, collected, and mostly importantly, silent. And we're going to run a couple commercials. We're going to be right back. We're talking with Dan Johnson, founder of PANDA, the People Against the National Authorization... I'm sorry. Let's make sure we say this right. People Against the National Defense Act. And that is what Dan is working on at PANDA. We encourage you to check it out. We're going to be right back after this quick commercial break here on the newamericanmedia.com's Agree to Disagree program.
You are listening to the Agree to Disagree program on the newamericanmedia.com.
Hi, Brian from the newamericanmedia.com. Last year I had this idea. I wanted to start a website of my own, not just something, a presence on Twitter, a presence on Facebook, and have a thing. I wanted a website. I wanted a home base for all of the ideas and things I'm interested in. I wanted live radio. I wanted to communicate with the globe. I was tired of being spoon-fed dogma by corporate interests and just, here, believe this, believe this. I said, no, I think there's something underneath the surface, but I didn't know how to do it. So I contacted Ted Distel of disteldesign.com. Ted walked us through the process of, okay, you want videos, you want to do quotes of the day, you want to have a spiritual section, you want to have a 1984 watch where governments intruding and private corporations are intruding into your privacy. Yeah, those are the things that I was interested in. Ted walked me through the process. We built thenewamericanmedia.com, and I encourage you to go online and take a look at our site. That's what he's capable of. Please, if you have an idea, go to disteldesign.com. That's DISTEL design.com.
Have you ever considered adopting a pet to be part of your family? Our animal companions can be just as close to us as our human companions. If you're considering adoption, please visit your local shelter and adopt a pet today. Shelter pets make the best pets.
Follow the newamericanmedia.com on Twitter at American_media_.
Hi, it's Brian from the newamericanmedia.com. I'm a sports fan. I was raised in Cleveland, spent 25 years in Ohio. I watched the drive, the fumble, the shot too. I watched Art Modell steal the Cleveland Browns and win a Super Bowl over in Baltimore. I watched a horrible coach named Bill Belichick go on to the Patriots and win Super Bowls over there. Hooray. I'm a bitter sports fan. Let's not even talk about what happened with he who shall not be named, who went to South Beach to take his talents there. Excuse me, I almost threw up in my mouth a little bit there. I am a sports fan who cares to talk about the things that matter to me. That is the Indians, the Cavs, the Browns, and the Buckeyes. But of course, I pay attention to national sports, and we discuss that on our show as well. That's why we have The Unhappy Hour every single Friday at 3:30 p.m. Pacific. Sit down, have a drink. It's the end of a long work week, and we can all get together and talk about the unhappy times that we've had as sports fans. We've all had them. We've had ups and downs, but as Cleveland fans, we only have downs. Join us.
You are listening to the Agree to Disagree program on the newamericanmedia.com. You are listening to the Agree to Disagree program on the newamericanmedia.com.
Hi, what's up, everybody? This is Brian at the newamericanmedia.com. We are talking about the National Defense Authorization Act, PANDA. People Against the National Defense Act. So it's called the NDAA. We're live with Dan Johnson, who has decided to devote... Dan, how much time are you devoting every week to this project, by the way?
Personally, I devote about 100 hours a week to PANDA.
How do you find that time? How in the world do you find the time for this? And how do you pay your bills when you can't work to pay your bills doing something that is so important, trying to defend freedom and liberty? How does it work? Do you have a site on your page where you ask for donations? Where if it's like if someone wants to help contribute or donate to your cause, do you do anything like that? Because that's a lot of time to be spending on a cause like this that we could all benefit from.
Yeah, there is a donate page on our website. I don't like to make my main source of any money the Liberty Movement. Just about all the money, and actually. As of right now, we are saying it as every single penny that you put on the donate page goes straight to the NDAA. I take not a single penny from that. I have a part-time job now that I'm working with, and yes, I get a lot less sleep, but it's the passion, it's the adrenaline, it's the passion that keeps me going for this, because I don't want to see America turn into join the likes of states like Syria or China or North Korea. All of them have indefinite detention. And America, the freedom bastion of the Western Hemisphere and the world, actually, I don't want to see, don't want to bring my children, the future generation, into a world where the government can arrest anyone for speaking their mind, or can arrest people for being a part of a group that speaks their mind.
Now, there's a lot of people out there in the country that are going to say that could never happen here. This is America. That could never happen in America. This is land of the free, home of the brave, and the land of the Burger King Whopper and the McDonald's Big Mac. That could never happen here. Talk to those people that don't understand that when you make a Syria comparison, that stuff could really occur here if we're not vigilant, eternally vigilant. Talk to the person that just doesn't believe you. Because we talked about the opposition before saying, the NDAA doesn't apply to U.S. citizens, which we know is false. Talk to the person that says, why should I care? That'll never happen here.
Right, and completely understandable, and definitely not to force views on anyone. Anything I say can be fact-checked and documented online. Google the NDAA, find links on that, etc. But looking at how this could never happen here, need to look at a series of events that brought us to this point. Starting with September 11th, 2001. We know this as the big terrorist attacks in New York, and the motto in Congress seemed to be then, never miss taking advantage of a good crisis.
Right.
So immediately afterward, they passed the Patriot Act, a very interesting name for a bill that for the first time in history allowed the government to spy on the private communications of American citizens in order to combat terrorism. Now, they're attempting to combat an idea with a law, but that's an argument for another day. Moving on from the Patriot Act, in 2007, you had the John Werner National Defense Authorization Act. This isn't a horrible NDAA like this one is, but they snuck a provision in that one that creates a military to operate in the United States. It creates a separate unit to operate in the United States. As you know, the doctrine of Pars Comitatus, the military cannot operate in the United States, but the John Werner National Defense Act creates a unit that can do that and trains them in night vision, or buying a lot of night vision equipment for them and training them in tactics for crowd control and etc.
Dan, let me jump in right there, because I don't know if you were aware or if any of the other listeners were paying attention, but we had a major training exercise. This had to have been within the past 3 months. I don't recall the exact date, but it was members of the U.S. military trained with the LAPD in crowd control, and we went down to the Occupy LA rally, the very first one in October when everything was starting to hit the fan, and I found it really strange that the U.S. military is training with the LAPD when you're not technically supposed to be doing that, and if they are doing that, what are they planning? And if we're just trying to speak up, what are they trying to shut us up about? And then I got to thinking, if that whole movement is a good thing or a bad thing, is it organic or is it just funded by George Soros and the unions? And, it got me thinking 100 different things, but why is the military working with the LAPD? I was wondering, did you hear about that story? And if not, or if so, what are your comments on it?
I heard about I wasn't positive if it was the LAPD or not. It was either New York or LA. I know they were working with. And a lot of that started with Hurricane Katrina. Again, never miss taking advantage of a good crisis. Hurricane Katrina came in, and they started basically using the military as law enforcement. From then on, since it was seen as, have you ever heard of a boiling frog? Scenario where if you instantly turn on boiling water, the frog will jump out, but if you slowly, bit by bit, boil that frog, it will stay in until it dies.
You know, that's a good point, and let me jump in right there with the fact that you put the frogs in the water and you slowly make it hot, hot, hot. It's a nice hot tub, and all of a sudden now you're cooking, you're smelling. That smells delicious. Wait, that's me. You know, there's. We had an opportunity to see an event with Henry Waxman. And Henry Waxman, as you all recall, was the gentleman that brought a speed reader, a la, remember the Micro Machines, man? I don't know, that was probably before your time, but they brought a speed reader to Congress in reaction to the people who were saying, well, maybe we should read the 2,700 pages of this healthcare overhaul, this healthcare monstrosity, this thing. Maybe we should read what's in it. Nancy, as you know, Nancy Pelosi was out there saying, I can't wait to pass it to find out what's in it. But this guy, Henry Waxman, representative from California on the west side, I was at an event with him. He's the one that brought the speed reader. And he was talking to a bunch of fundraisers saying, this is the culmination of our 100-year plan. Net neutrality is the culmination of our 100-year progressive plan. He was telling all of his high-money, high-rolling Los Angeles area donors, this is the culmination of our 100-year plan. And I just got news that CISPA passed today. Did you hear about that, sir?
I was actually just going to talk about that breaking news.
Bring it in.
It just, literally just passed in a last-minute vote in the House. What they actually did was they added an amendment to it, which made it even easier for the government to share private information just before they passed it. They shut the House at rapid speed. And at this point, it's up to the Senate to stop CISPA in its tracks. And not only that, not long ago, ACTA actually passed in most of Europe. So you have this worldwide assault on civil liberties, and especially liberties on the internet.
So let's ask this question. Let's go further down the rabbit hole. We're talking with Dan Johnson of PANDA about the National Defense Authorization Act as well as any other monstrosity that's stripping your civil liberties. What is a people supposed to do when the elected officials that are supposed to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States of America are doing things that are illegal, that are against the Bill of Rights, that are against the Constitution, when the elected officials have either been bought or sold or tricked or manipulated, whatever it is? What recourse do we have to get ourselves back on the right track short of really bad stuff? What option do we have here? Because it really seems intentional at this point. This cannot be accidental that all of these things are occurring at the same time and actually speeding up. It doesn't seem accidental to me. What are we supposed to do, and am I reading this the right way?
Yeah, I made a joke one time that the current administration seems to be trying to set the record to install an authoritarian state in 1 year. What we're looking at right here is, yes, and it's definitely intentional. Now, what we can do about it, and it's really simple, actually. When you look at a government, when people talk about how the government is corrupt, they're often talking about the national government, and it's true. The national government is very corrupt. For example, the Ohio Senator Rob Portman, representing Lucas County in Toledo, he actually got paid $275,000 to sign the NDAA by a company that got night vision contracts not long after that. Moving on from there, local officials and local sheriffs and county sheriffs actually have a lot of jurisdiction and the ability to, as independent entities, basically disobey federal law. Now, the point here is talking to local people and making it a grassroots movement, because eventually Congress, eventually the executive branch, eventually the judiciary has to listen. If a grassroots movement, a groundswell of people comes up and says, all right, this is enough. We're going to start legislating and we're going to start overruling your laws here because they're not going to work. And that is how the public gets involved, is grassroots. And the basic thing, inform people about this. Out of the 500 or so people I've talked to about this, maybe 10 who I've actually had a conversation with or actually even chatted with have supported it. The main support is coming out of Washington. Now, if you get people together and you create a grassroots movement, a true grassroots movement, you can turn back things like this. And it all starts with connecting with someone like PANDA or someone like a Bill Rights Defense Committee and helping them out and seeing what you can do. And everyone can do something, even like an hour every 2 weeks. Really helps out the liberty movement, and that's also kind of what our Get Involved page does. It connects you where you best fit so that the liberty movement can continue from a grassroots perspective.
Okay, well, there was another topic that you and I had been talking about, and it was the Presidential Policy Directive. Can you explain the difference to somebody that doesn't know anything about the NDAA other than they're supposed to believe it's bad? What's the difference between 1022 and 1021?
Okay. In regards to 1022 and 1021, they're not the exact same provision, but they have just about the same meaning. They both consider the United States a battlefield, and they both talk about detaining American citizens and etc. Well, what the NDAA, a section of the NDAA requires the president to, after 60 days after the law was passed, so it would be around March 2nd, requires the president to set out the policies and procedures for detaining people under 1022. Now, looking at Section 1021, it talks about the detaining of American citizens. 1021 and 1022 are almost carbon copies of each other as far as meaning goes. So the president tricked a lot of people with signing a presidential policy directive, which, by the way, can be rescinded by a new president. So, for example, if Obama doesn't get elected this year, reelected this year, or even 4 years down the road, that presidential policy directive can be changed, modified, etc., even by a current sitting president. So, presidential policy directive, not solid law and cannot be really repealed by Congress. So, what we're looking at is something that nullifies the Section 1022, but doesn't touch Section 1021. It's like if there's two cakes on the table, and cakes are bad, you eat one of the cakes, there's still a cake on the table. Same thing there with the signing of the PPD, or Presidential Policy Directive.
So there's just so many people that are discouraged beyond belief. You know, it seems whether it's a Republican or a Democrat in the office of the presidency, it doesn't matter who's in the House or the Senate. It just seems like Congress, the presidency, the Federal Reserve, all of these things are completely stacked against us. My question is, I'll tell you what, let me pause on that one because that's a good way to wrap things up. But I just touched on the Federal Reserve. That's a place where we picked it up at the break and we didn't get bounced back to. Tell me how the Federal Reserve links in with the NDAA in this overreach regarding the liberty movement. And what do you think the common misconceptions with the general public are with the Federal Reserve? And what are they doing to the country from a financial standpoint? Because I think it's something that a lot of people just are not aware of, Dan.
Right, and the Federal Reserve is one of the worst things. It's a central bank. It wasn't really designed, and it was actually told to us by Andrew Jackson, Thomas Jefferson, etc. We need to avoid this entirely. It's a central bank, and it creates a money source where the country can be controlled. Now, the Federal Reserve can be easily misunderstood. Looking at what of the people at the Federal Reserve, what they're saying is they're continually talking about they control the money and they can keep the interest rates low and they can basically keep everything all spick and span. Well, the Federal Reserve is easily explained, and I'll connect to the NDAA in about a minute, but it's easily explained by looking at trading cards or baseball cards. If you have a baseball card and it's, let's just say it's Albert Pujols, and you only have one baseball card of him, and that's the only one in existence, it's much more valuable than if you have another baseball card and there's 600 to 700 of that in existence. The same with the Federal Reserve. They have quantitative easing, or QE, which is introducing money to the economy. inflation doesn't exist without the Federal Reserve because the Federal Reserve controls the money supply. If the money supply is tied to a gold standard, you don't need a Federal Reserve. So going back and how this ties into the NDAA, the people controlling the Federal Reserve and controlling the money supply are the same people that are controlling the mainstream media. Mainstream media, through many links, is tied to the IMF, International Monetary Fund, et cetera, et cetera. So tying that in, one of the reasons the mainstream media is not covering the Fed, the NDAA, bills like this, is because they're owned by the people who want the Fed to keep going.
Do you want the Fed to keep going?
Definitely not. And it's easy to see. I mean, it's not even like a guess. It's easy to see that you don't want 5, 6, 10 people controlling what your money's worth and controlling, like you work somewhere, they control what you get out of working somewhere. You should be able to control that amount with how much work you put in. Now, with the Federal Reserve, they determine what you get after the work you put in. So it's a horrible, horrible idea. And it's central control. Well, whenever you have central control, power corrupts. But absolute power corrupts absolutely. And having central control like that, it eventually hurts the country because the people running the Fed are not going to act always in the country's best interest, and they're not often going to. The second point as to why that's a horrible idea is because things go down in value, and inflation is caused by having a Federal Reserve, by having someone control the money supply. Inflation, well, in general, is pretty bad. You just end up paying more for things. So going back, basically those 2 points are why the Federal Reserve is a horrible idea: inflation and the control of an entire country by like 10 people.
Well, is that the reason why it's $50 to fill your gas tank and $200 for a few bags of decent groceries? Is it because the Federal Reserve just keeps running quantitative easing plans, QE1, QE2, and stuff that's so boring most of us just don't pay attention to, and we just say, well, that federal institution will handle it. They're the Federal Reserve. They have it under control. Is that what's happening?
And yeah, that is kind of basically what's happening with the quantitative easing, and it's not necessarily, gas prices are a different story, and they would take a little bit longer to cover. You may want to cover it on a different segment. But the groceries, yes. The groceries are inflation, and inflation is caused by that Federal Reserve. Again, going back to the trading card example, if you used to be able to trade one Albert Pujols for $400 of groceries, and now the Federal Reserve puts another 75,000 Albert Pujols trading cards in the system, well, you can no longer buy $400 of groceries with one Albert Pujols. You have to have a couple hundred. So that's the simplest way to put it, and how the Federal Reserve hurts everyone.
Okay, so in this election, obviously we have a lot of different choices. We're going to have in 2012 a lot of different directions to go as a country. But by the way, I've entered severe sarcasm mode. I'm a little distraught that the Cleveland Browns have selected quarterback Brandon Weeden from Oklahoma State, despite the fact that we needed an offensive tackle or a wide receiver. So I'm a little distraught with that. But, you know, we're going to have all these different options, different choices to select from, just like an NFL draft, right? Mitt Romney's very different from Barack Obama. Or are we going to get more of the same regardless of if either of these two candidates become the nominee and the eventual president? Is there any difference between the two, or do we have options here?
There's not much of a difference between Mitt Romney and Barack Obama. They both have basically the same healthcare plan. They're both very pro bailout, and you could go on. The best way to put Mitt Romney is it's really hard to tell who he is. The best quote I ever heard was, I used to be a flip-flopper, but then I changed my mind.
I love
and
it.
That seems to really accurately describe Mitt Romney. You can look it up for yourself on YouTube. There's videos of him speaking, changing his position in the same speech. So he could be exactly like President Obama because he just wants to keep the trend going, wants to keep votes, and if that's what got President Obama into office, that might be what he's going for to get him into office.
Okay, so, I guess that's all we're left with. It's Romney versus Obama, and it's meet your new boss, same as your old boss. You're going to get more of the same. What are normal Americans, just an average person, not somebody that's deep into finance, working at Goldman Sachs or, J.P. Morgan Chase or something, or someone that's not really deep into government? What is the bulk of the country supposed to do when you're left with this false choice of, here, pick 1A or 1B, but you don't get option 2, 3, or 4? What in the world are we supposed to do if we want to return to the constitutional values that this country was founded on? Because there's a lot of frustrated people out there that just have been shaking their heads so long the neck is sore, and they're not really sure where to go next here, but we know something is wrong. What are we supposed to do?
Now, the first step is it's really easy, and it's basically inform people. There's many good people out there. As one quote said, the worst happens not when the bad men continue to do things, but the good men do nothing. And there's a lot of people out there who know these type of things, but aren't walking into their insurance agent and saying, hey, have you heard about the NDAA? Have you heard about SOPA? Have you heard about CISPA? And informing people about this is the first step. It's basically, and it's easy. It's just say, you're in a conversation and you say, hey, I heard about the NDAA. Yeah, here's what it is. And that's the easiest way to put it, is you can go on and you can just say, hey, inform people about it. And then connect with people who want to be informed about it. Ron Paul is obviously a choice of many people who are very liberty-minded, and I like the choice, but he's not, in my prediction, I guess, he's not going to win the election simply because he's too anti-establishment or against the minds of the people currently in power. So the simple way is just grassroots, and it's worked in so many countries. You can cite many of the countries in the Arab Spring, and you can go through and on the internet. If you turn your actions on the internet into actions on the ground, that makes a big difference, and that can really win the country back.
Are we even going to have the internet after CISPA?
Now, in implementing any law, a government would definitely want to wait until the firestorm has breathed its last breath. So we're not going to have too much CISPA censorship, I don't think, if a lot of people make a big funk about it, make a big firestorm about it, and then as soon as an incident happens where they use CISPA, fire that out across the entire internet, because that would be where CISPA is defeated, where they can't really use it. Because as soon as they use it, there's public outrage. Outrage is the easiest way to change what the government is doing, what the government is thinking. Yeah, we'll definitely have an internet as long as people stay vigilant on this type of things like CISPA, SOPA, PIPA, and any other anti-free internet bill that comes across the table.
Well, I'll tell you what, you're doing a good job illuminating the NDAA, and it's hard to get any more relevant than being black-bagged and kidnapped under a suspicion indefinitely without a trial as a United States citizen. It's very hard to get any worse than that. Now, as we move forward in the next few months, as we head toward an election, tell me the stuff that PANDA is going to be working on, and if somebody likes what you're saying and says, something sounds wrong to me too, I want to get involved, kind of give us a little heads up as far as what PANDA is going to be working on the next few months and how people can connect with you.
All right. Before I get into that, I'd like to touch on one simple thing. The part where it talks about a suspected terrorist, and this is one of the key points in the NDAA that I haven't yet covered, but it's crucial to cover. A suspected terrorist. Jailing someone that is suspected is simply like me walking up to a random stranger on the street saying, hey, you smell funny and you look like a terrorist, and then 3 seconds later, they're in a holding cell. It's without even a chance to voice their opinion, and that's what the NDAA does, because as we talked about, definitions are everything. Suspected terrorist is defined by the government as also someone who blames the government for their perceived problems. So, number one, according to the government, you have no problems. And number two, if you blame the government for them, you're a terrorist. And same thing with protesting. And I'd like to, just before I continue on to your question, I'd like to highlight a recent example in Lake Mary, Florida. There's a family in Lake Mary, Florida that was actually raided by the FBI under laws like the NDAA. I believe it was under the Military Commissions Act that they were raided. And their house, everything was taken in their house because they were a member, not because they did anything, but because they were simply a member of Sovereign Citizens, which is a group that advocates for no income tax. They still pay their taxes, but they advocate that there shouldn't be any. And that's an example of this being used. So the key distinction in the NDAA is suspected, and that is something that definitely has to be understood, that the government cannot tell who is a terrorist instantly. They have to put them through trial. And over 17 military generals said that they have to put them through trial. Former military generals, retired admirals, etc. said you have to put them through a civilian court. And what the government is doing is labeling them suspected, and then throwing them in jail and not giving them a chance in court. And that's the key here.
It's
It's
incredible.
Go ahead.
No, I'm just saying it's incredible. It's almost too much to take in. So if somebody out there wants to get more information, tell them again about your website and how they can get involved.
Yeah, peopleagainstndaa.com. You can go on there and our Get Involved tab. Click on that. Fill out the forms. It's not too hard. Tell us, hey, I'm good at database design, or I know a few people, or something like that. We'll definitely connect you with a lot of help, and we'll show you that there's a huge, huge patriot movement that is out there to take this on, and all you guys need to do is basically connect with us and go on our Get Involved page, shoot us an email, and we'll give you pretty much all the help you could want or need to fight the NDAA in your state and pretty much wherever you are.
Well, that's very nice. We certainly appreciate the work that you're doing over at PANDA. We've been talking with Dan Johnson, founder of PANDA. That's People Against the National Defense Act. We encourage you to go over and take a look at his website because he's doing the heavy lifting. Come on over and give him a hand. My name's Brian. This is the Agree to Disagree program. We're wrapping things up here. Yes, the Cleveland Browns just picked quarterback Brandon Weeden with their second first-round pick. Really unfortunate since we need a wide receiver and a tackle. But once again, it's just highlighting how distracted I am when we're talking about being black-bagged and stolen, kidnapped by our own federal government, that I give a damn about football. Wake up, America. You and me both. We can all do a little bit better, and we can all fight for freedom together. That's why we brought Dan Johnson of PANDA onto the program. Dan, thank you again for joining us. Any final parting word to people as we walk out the door?
The only thing is, we'll have events on our page. They'll be in your state. Get involved.
Beautiful. Thank you very much. That is Dan. His group is PANDA. My name is Brian. This is the NewAmericanMedia.com. We're about out of time here, so I want to thank you for joining us today. It's been a heck of a ride. When your government's doing this and your favorite football team is doing this, what are you supposed to do? It's not like they're leaving us with many options. We do this every Friday. This was a special version of the show today on Thursday. We'll be back next Friday to do this again. Thank you so much for your time. Take care, everybody.